VIENNA Calling, der Videopodcast von und mit Petra Bayr. Aktuelle Fragen der Zeit kurz und prägnant beantwortet.
Hello, it is my great pleasure to welcome Lölja Nordic today here in the video podcast. Lölja is activist and artist from St. Petersburg, and she is co-founder of the feminist anti-war resistance movement. Lölja, I saw you yesterday evening demonstrating in front of the Austrian parliament. Why have you been there?
Thank you, Petra, for having me on your podcast. It's a great honor. And yesterday it was inauguration of Vladimir Putin. For the fifth time, he became a president. And me and other Russian activists decided to protest this because we think that our voices should be heard. And for us, it's important to, first of all, represent voices of people inside Russia who are not able to speak up against it.
Yeah, and can you tell a little bit how does the resistance look like in Russia and how does it look like abroad?
It's very bonded together. So Russian resistance is impossible to exist when you only have people inside of the country or only outside of the country. So people from both sides of the border are working very closely together every day through online secret chats and co-organizing. So I'm using my privilege abroad to do certain things to help people inside the country. And at the same time, people inside the country had to go very underground to do their resistance in more partisan way, spreading anti-war agitation, helping Ukrainian refugees, doing some kind of radical protest, for example, stopping, breaking railways before trains with military equipment is going to the war zone. So there's a lot of different things. And of course, it's getting more and more difficult day by day because the level of repressions grows very quickly.
I think we also shouldn't go into more detail because we do not want to put them to additional risk. They already are at risk. But is there any way how we could support from Austria this resistance for a democratic Russia?
I think it is important to address the issues of Russian civil society to Austrian government because and it's not only my opinion, it's the opinion of many Russian people in exile and many people in Russia. The relationships of Austria and Russia is very problematic because Austria is a neutral state, but at the same time, Austria pays a lot of money to Russian government for gas, for fossil fuels. And at the same time, there's a lack of support of Russian civil society. And in my opinion, you should balance it out in a way because I am a person in exile in Vienna and I had troubles of getting visa. I had to go and become a student here to be able to stay in Austria because there's no such thing as humanitarian visa for Russian activists. There's no such thing as a support for deserters in Austria. And I think we have to fix these very specific problems.
This dependence of Austria on Russian gas is obvious. Can you put this in figures, in money?
I think you should know this better since you are from Austria, but I'm monitoring. There's a great website that monitors the amount of money that European countries paid for Russian fossil fuels since the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, and the numbers, they are overwhelming. I can't tell you the exact numbers now, but it's easily Googled. And the balance of this, I understand the dependence. I understand that you can switch off gas in a second. I'm also a climate activist, so there's a bigger problem in all this. But Austria is a very rich country and very powerful country. And if you are dependent on Russian fossil fuels, do something to do more to support Ukrainian people, do more to support Russian civil society to balance this out. Because now we see that more resources are going just right into the Putin's pocket than to support people who are resisting the dictatorship.
Yeah, that means, of course, to become independent from fossil fuels in general means also to become more independent of Russia. Means that the money flowing from Austria to Russia gets less. So we also could use more resources for the fight for independence, for the fight for a democratic Russia. So that's the obvious connection.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a very important part is right-wing politicians and right-wing and conservative, the rise of conservative politics worldwide and in Austria as well. I'm 100% sure, it's not my guess, that Kremlin is very interested in right-wingers winning in Austria in the next election.
Mhm.
Putin needs as much as right-wing governments as possible worldwide, because conservative values, it is what Putin wants to spread worldwide. So for me, fighting Putin dictatorship means fighting right-wing politicians and conservative politicians worldwide, and in Austria specifically, because Austria is a very important strategical partner to Russia.
So you didn't mention it now, but I think it's obvious that Russia again will try to influence voting campaigns, election campaigns.
Of course.
Do you see any signs already how they try to do that?
I think it will be a lot of fuss in the media. So Russia, we know that Russia finances a lot of small and large right-wing groups. Russia has a lot of media that they finance as well. So I think we might see some scandals in the media, try to promote right-wingers and try to mock more leftist people and more liberal politicians. So it's not a guess, it's how Kremlin works. They interfere with the elections to promote right-winger politicians. It's not only happening in Europe. It's like they have departments who are interfering worldwide because this is a strategical thing. So I think we will see maybe something in summer in media, which I think will be very connected to pro-Russian propaganda, and you could see Kremlin ears behind this.
For sure. So for me, it's quite obvious why Russia has interest to support right wingers or extreme right parties all over the world, because they support them and they oppose, for instance, any support towards Ukraine and so on. But what is the benefit for the right wing parties here?
I think that there are so many people who are actually loyal to Putin, and I mean they are sympathetic to Putin. They are not just able to speak it out loud. And I think, we've seen this for years. Like Putin has been in power for 24 years, and before full-scale invasion in Ukraine, and before 2014, there were so many people openly supporting him in Austria, and they were very happy for buying cheap fossil fuel from them. Also, right-winger politicians, most of them, they're not interested in stopping fossil fuel business in general because they're benefiting from it. So like there are so many connections. And I think right now a lot of politicians who are saying that they're against Putin, they're kind of, sympathetic towards his views, even though it's strategically better for them to state that they are, of course, against it. So I think there's a lot of these tiny things, and we should be very aware of it.
Yeah, I can say that I'm also president of the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, and we made a study looking on 2 terms of European parliamentary elections, so 10 years, how much money comes into Europe, into the European Union, to support all this anti-gender and anti-choice movement, to undermine equal rights of men and women, to undermine free access to safe abortion and things like that. And the Kremlin is one of the main supporters, of the main sources where money comes from to Europe. So there is huge influence from
Yes, of course. And I think those conservative and right-wing politicians in Europe, they are they're very happy to hear the news about Russia when government abuses rights of queer people. As you might heard, LGBTQ plus movement is now fully banned in Russia. It is named officially as extremist movement in Russia, which is insane. And women's rights are shrinking in Russia because government is not interested in gender equalities. And of course, people like Western right-wingers love it. They want the same things in their countries.
Exactly, they are brothers in mind. Absolutely. As you mentioned, your legal status and the lack of humanitarian visa issue in Austria. Indeed, it is a problem not only for Russian opposition and resistance people, but also for people fleeing from Iraq or from Afghanistan. As Social Democrats, we are working on that, and we would like to change the situation. Just to mention it, but maybe a very last question to you: what is your vision of a post-Putin Russia?
I mean, I hope I will live to it, because sometimes it feels that Putin will be there forever. My whole life was Putin's reign, but my goal is to live to it, and I think there will be very difficult time, because when such authoritarian regime falls, it can't be, perfect world with rainbows in a second. So I think there will be a fight for power. I think there will be a lot of dirty and ugly things going on. But I think that my generation, people who are younger than me, people who way younger than Putin, are going to fight for our freedom. And because we don't want any dictatorship, any authoritarianism to happen again. I think it will be a very difficult fight. And I don't believe that the regime might just fail, and then it will be a whole new bright world. It will be a very difficult fight.
Yeah. So it's my personal goal in my political lifetime, at least, to have Russia back in the Council of Europe. That's about 10 years horizon. So I really hope that we see this change. And I want to thank you for your important work. Thank you for doing what you are doing. And wherever we can support you, we will stay in contact, of course, and let us know, and we will stay in touch. Thanks you very much, Lölja. And
Thank
all
you
the
very
best
much.
for you and the whole resistance movement.
Thank you.
VIENNA Calling, der Videopodcast von und mit Petra Bayr. Aktuelle Fragen der Zeit, kurz und prägnant.